so excited to be here. My name is Amy Worthington, and I am currently a group product manager at Bamboo HR. Now, for those of you who maybe don't know a whole lot about HR or what Bamboo does, let me give you some quick context. First, meet Ben and Ryan, two of the best humans you will ever meet. In 2008, they wanted to create a company that had an exceptional product that customers would love, and build a company where employees would enjoy coming to work. They knew that if they could accomplish both of those things, financial success would naturally follow. It's important to note that success at Bamboo is about much more than making money. It's about loving what we do because it makes a difference, and knowing our work supports our personal lives, not the other way around. Now, it's not uncommon for companies to talk about their values. However, at Bamboo, not only do we talk about our values, but they inform everything that we do. They set the standard for how we think, how we communicate, and how we act. Our values aren't cute posters that we point to when it's only convenient. Instead, they guide the way that we do business and the way that we interact with our customers and our peers every single day. Bamboo's vision is to set people free to do great work. And by people, we mean everyone: HR professionals, employees, and entire organizations. We've seen what a workplace free from unnecessary process, workplace politics, and other holdups can do. From our experience, we know it can build an award-winning product, solve problems efficiently without drama, and most importantly, help customers spend more time focused on their people and doing great work. We envision that same experience can exist for everyone in every organization around the world, and we want to help make it happen. When it comes to our product, we have 5 main areas of focus: hiring, onboarding, people, data, and analytics, culture, and compensation. Today, we're going to spend our time talking about a piece of our compensation area, everyone's favorite topic: payroll, which I think it is everyone's favorite topic, because who doesn't love getting paid for doing their job, right? Woo! We all get paychecks, yeah. I have been working on Bamboo's payroll product since I joined the team 4.5 years ago. And contrary to what you may think, payroll is a fun, interesting, tricky, and very satisfying problem to solve. During our time together today, I'm going to highlight a few of the main things that we've learned on our journey to providing a payroll solution for our customers. Then we're going to go deep on a recent project to understand an area where our lessons have been a bit hard-earned. It will be a bit contrary to the types of lessons you most commonly hear talked about, mostly because it's one that we all want to hope never actually happens at the organization we're a part of, right? And it will highlight why the Bamboo values are an integral part of our product development process. So let's talk about payroll. Payroll is essential to every organization. At the center of every employer-employee relationship lives that regular transaction of receiving your paycheck and being compensated for your work. Now, if you're like most people, you naively think that payroll is something that is super easy, a little bit set it and forget it, and basically just runs on autopilot. You get your paycheck, you never even check your pay stub, right? Like, it's just magic. Now, if there is anything that you remember from my talk today, I'm okay if it's this. The person in charge of payroll at your organization deserves every hug, high five, treat drop-off, and thank you that you can give them. Why? Because payroll is complicated. Not only does your payroll admin need to ensure accuracy of over 75 unique pieces of data per employee, but they also need to ensure accuracy of things like time cards, vacation hours, deductions, tax withholdings, new hires, terminations, bonuses, commissions, reimbursements, and a whole wide variety of other things. I was just getting so excited. The list is long. For every single employee, every time they go to process payroll. That's a lot. And if your organization's big, that's a lot of work. Nearly half of payroll administrators surveyed said that they regularly experience errors when running payroll. A big contributor to that problem is the fact that a large majority of them are having to manage and maintain data in 2 different systems, maybe 3, sometimes 4. Additionally, many of the tools available are archaic, clunky, and hard to use, which only complicates things even more and compounds the problem of getting payroll done efficiently and accurately. Bamboo's desire to solve this pain well by providing payroll admins with an all-in-one experience that eliminates the need for double data entry, provides confidence that employees will be paid accurately, gets the job done in minutes instead of days or hours, and is refreshing to use, is what led us to acquire our longtime payroll partner, Trax Payroll, back in 2018. For those of you who haven't been at a company that's either been acquired or done the acquiring, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Acquisitions are typically really hard. You are combining different cultures, different ways of doing business, different ways of building product, trying to merge people from both companies into the same team, and everyone has misaligned expectations of the time and effort it's going to take to combine your products. Needless to say, it is very rare for them to go smooth. And fortunately for us, the typical culture, personality, and team merging pain points haven't really existed because of how intentional we were during the acquisition process to ensure that our cultures and people aligned well. However, when it's come to taking an existing product and adding it into Bamboo, it hasn't been sunshine and roses. Even though we had an existing payroll integration with Trax, and we had a white labeled payroll partnership with another provider, and had been thorough in our research, we quickly realized just how much we didn't know that we didn't know about payroll. We spent our first 6 months learning all that we could. We spent time in discovery, learning things like how payroll implementation works, the ins and outs of the payroll lifecycle. We learned about hundreds of variables that affect whether or not payroll is accurate. We sat with the payroll processing and tax admin teams to understand how they process payroll and pay taxes. And we dove headfirst into discovering and understanding the behind the scenes. Those of you who think that when payroll, like the payroll admin just hits the approve button, it's magic and it's done, let me tell you about all the people who make sure that that money gets transitioned and paid and taken care of. So we had a lot to learn initially. And as is true always in product, right? You never stop learning. And especially in payroll, we have never stopped learning. So in addition to learning all that we could and managing the day-to-day of continuing to enhance our existing integration, we also had to get serious about scaling our internal teams to meet the demand that having our own payroll product would create for all departments. We had to hire in product, UX, development, BizOps, implementation, and support. Over time, we've been moving functionality out of Trax and into Bamboo, creating a home base for all things payroll and laying the foundation for the ability to run payroll to move into the Bamboo ecosystem. One of the most important things that we've had to learn to do is say no. Because we technically have a payroll product, even though it's in a separate system, it's been tempting more than once for us to consider adding new features that neither system has to allow us to open up the gates to people we're currently saying no to. We have had to be relentless with our no's when considering new features, as well as when deciding what things we will move from Trax into Bamboo. It hasn't been comfortable telling sales no, and having to have discussions with the original creators of a product and telling them that you're taking things a little bit of a different direction hasn't always been easy. But being intentional with our yeses has allowed us to focus and make great progress on ensuring that the payroll experience our customers receive is one that is done in the Bamboo way. One of the hurdles we had to take on early was figuring out how to turn Bamboo into the system of truth for all the data that our existing shared customers were actively maintaining in both Bamboo and Trax. You'll see here that there was a lot of overlap between our two systems. Those are the broad categories of where that data lived. Due to the nature of our original partnership, customers had an API that they had to manually trigger, and it would populate a dashboard in the Trax system where they then reviewed every single update and chose to either accept, ignore, or archive that data. This experience not only created extra work and overhead for those payroll admins because they had to then accept every change that they had just entered, it also led to a lot of out-of-sync data because what would happen is if payroll run day, they're in there, they're getting frustrated or maybe things aren't syncing the way they want, so they would just go directly to where that data lived in Trax, update it, and go process payroll. So then the two systems are out of sync. In late 2019 and early 2020, we built and released a number of projects to help address making Bamboo the system of truth for all shared payroll data. Those projects included things like upping the game with our data validation in Bamboo, creating a few new reports for payroll admins, giving companies a way to enter and maintain essential payroll data in Bamboo so that we could sunset the management of that data in Trax, hiding all of the fields for the shared data in the Trax system completely so that they could no longer get it out of sync, they could only edit it in Bamboo, And then we had to ensure that the update of the data from Bamboo to Tracks was automatic. We didn't want you to have to think about updating your payroll data. We wanted to just do it automatically so that you could start thinking about us as one system. Due to the need, this is important. So it's important for me to note here that this enhanced experience only worked for customers who are brand new to payroll. Due to the need to reconcile the data between both systems for existing customers, the release of these updates didn't apply to anyone in our existing customer pool. With that said, the release of these updates was still a major milestone for our team because we had simplified the product experience, made a significant stride in getting payroll-related items into Bamboo, opened up the gates for more sales, and learned a lot through the process. We learned a lot of payroll things doing that. So as the dust settled with our celebration, we looked to tackle the next items on our roadmap, and we had two major options. First, we could do the more naturally appealing option of building out the run payroll process in Bamboo and get the last thing into Bamboo. This option would allow us to offer that seamless experience to new customers sooner and would give us the opportunity to update a process we know is painful to be something much more intuitive and beautiful inside Bamboo. Or we could figure out a way to build tools for our existing customers to clean up all of the discrepancies between the two systems and move themselves to a newer version of the payroll product. Now, as all product managers in the room know, determining priority and roadmap can be some of the trickiest decisions you have to make, especially when you're comparing apples to oranges. It's never easy to make those decisions when the options and the benefits are so different. Fortunately for our team, the core values and the priorities of Bamboo made it quite a bit easier for us to make that decision and what we deemed to be the right decision. Our customers are at the core of what we do at Bamboo, which means doing the right thing for our existing customers is more important to us than chasing dollar bills. So even though it was less glamorous and would limit some of our ability to sell in the short term, we decided to prioritize our existing customers and find a way to give them a path to clean their data up so that they could enjoy the goodness of that simplified payroll world and be in a position to enjoy all the future goodness of the payroll updates that were coming to Bamboo. So with that decision made, we were off to the races. When we originally wrote our project charter, we identified 5 main goals for our efforts. First, make the process as painless as cleaning up hundreds to potentially thousands of mismatched data fields can be. Second, we wanted customers to be able to to do this cleanup on their own without having to work with our support team. Third, we wanted to automate the cleanup where we could. If there were things where we were smart enough and we knew what to do, we just wanted to take care of it for you so you didn't have to do it. Fourth, we wanted to simplify the lives of our engineering team by getting all the customers onto the same version of the product. Maintaining 2 worlds is not easy. And then fifth, we wanted to ensure all customers were going to use the version of the product that would allow them to experience all of the goodness we're adding into Bamboo. An additional item that was on our minds as we were talking about where we wanted to head with this was the need for us to build the most minimal version of this migration tool that we could. Because this tool was only going to be one-time use for customers, we had no intention to iterate all the way from scooter to car. If the scooter or the skateboard got customers through the process in a way that was delightful, effective, and accurate, we were happy. We quickly got to work with our research and soon discovered that there was a lot to consider. For every customer, there were 45 pieces of data we needed to assess and assign rankings to in order to know how complicated they would be to migrate. There were 13 categories of data that needed to figure out how to do cleanup for and how to migrate, and all of them had their own unique rules and validation. Third, there were 12 tricky scenarios that many of our customers fell into that we needed to know how to address. All of them very unique, all of them with lots of things to consider. There were 13 existing features and tracks that customers were using that would no longer be supported once the customer moved to this new version of the product, which meant we needed to figure out how to set their expectations and sunset the use of those features while also figuring out how to keep them as a client. And then last, there were 6 different areas where our customers either needed to migrate off of certain partnerships feature sets or to new feature sets in order to be prepared for this migration. So we call it the pre-migration migration. Needless to say, we were quickly deep in research mode and we're on the verge of running into analysis paralysis. We wanted to avoid getting into a situation where we didn't start moving and making things happen because there was so much to figure out. So much so that we wrote this passionate statement in our migration plan around taking baby steps, moving into the unknown, and adjusting along the way. Somewhere in the midst of all this research, one of the stakeholders for the project used a phrase that for some people on the team took on the wrong meaning. In an attempt to help us understand the need to balance the investment from the company on a one-time use product, providing customers an experience that was delightful enough, and being creative in how we solved the problem, this individual used the phrase, "be scrappy." This phrase started getting repeated often in meetings, discussions, and brainstorming. It became the mantra to just start moving and make things happen. So we did just that. We started moving, leaving behind some of the details we had already uncovered and trying to get things underway. We identified 4 phases of the project, the first of which was a low-hanging fruit option where we helped customers who had very minimal data just take care of things on their own, manually without a tool, and get set up. And then we identified the order we would go in building the tool and came up with a great way to determine who would be eligible. We had a handful of mocks, had the general idea of what we wanted to accomplish, and we started. The premise of the first version of our solution was that we would display any data that was out of sync side by side and ask the customer to tell us which of the two was accurate. We then planned to update Bamboo with all of the selected values, and once the customer went through each section of cleanup, they could graduate and have the new version of our product. In an attempt to keep the effort low, we only mocked out one section of data comparison, had a straw man of a spec, and told the dev team that they could just use a spreadsheet of fields to know what to do for the other 12 categories. I think you can tell where this is going to go. That time-saving approach of minimal design and an attempt at not needing to think through how to treat every field worked for a grand total of 3 of the 13 sections. It didn't take long for development to come back to us with a long list of reasons why what we had designed wasn't going to work for the other sets of data. So we went back to the drawing board. The main flaw in our first round of thinking was that there were many sections where there were orphaned records that weren't mapped between the two systems, which meant that they weren't even being considered for comparison when we would show data in the tool. We had no way of knowing if the record needed to be connected to an existing record that maybe already existed in the opposite system, or if we needed to create a new record altogether. Enter round 2 of mocks, where this time we designed one more screen to demonstrate how to handle solutions where records between the two systems needed to be mapped to each other. Well, this time around, we only made it one section further before we hit another snag in our thinking. So back to the drawing board again. This time around, our flawed thinking was rooted in the fact that we were going to be able to take sections like direct deposit information or taxes, and we couldn't allow customers to do a per field data cleanup because they're all related to each other, and if one changes, they all change. So instead, we needed to group the data in a way that would allow them to select a whole group of fields at once. Enter round 3, where this time we designed one more screen to demonstrate how to handle situations where fields needed to be grouped, instead of selected one by one. This time around, we still only made it one more section before we hit another snag in our thinking. And it was about this time when we were close to 2 months in on trying to build this tool that one of our developers paused in a meeting and said, "You know what? I don't think this minimalist approach is working. Instead of hoping that these mocks are going to cover everything we need to think of, and instead of hoping that dev is going to figure out most of the requirements on our own, we need to take some time to think through each data set and map out how each of these sections are going to work." Now, thankfully, Bamboo's culture is such that being open and having crucial conversations is proactively taught and encouraged, which means our team members' comment ended up being a perfect thing that led us to a series of really healthy discussions that caused us all to pause, strategize a bit better, build out a more detailed mocks and workflows, and write better detailed specs and more proactively solve the problem at hand. Over the course of the coming weeks, we were able to work out all of the necessary details to build a tool that solved both the problems effectively for customers and avoided introducing issues for customers in the long run. We even managed to build out an automatic drip campaign for the lollygaggers so that support didn't have to reach out to them and get them to go through the process on their own. When we started the project, we were targeting spending 2 months total for research, design, and build for the migration tool. And because we didn't pause to understand the full breadth of scope, and because we had to start, stop, and pivot so many times, we ended up spending close to 6 months building this tool. Now, fortunately for us and for our customers, the logic we spent time up front to determine the right phases and how to determine when customers would qualify means that every time we've completed a section and released something new, there's a whole new batch of customers that have been able to use the tool and move to the new payroll experience. We are currently wrapping up getting all of the eligible customers through phase 3, and then we have one remaining phase to complete early next year. We are often told as product teams to focus on creating the most minimally viable product we can while also prioritizing our customers' needs. We don't talk often enough about the times when our attempts at being scrappy have gotten in the way and end up costing us more time, more rework, and unnecessary pain for both customers and our internal teams. And for that reason, I want to touch briefly on what our team learned from this experience. First, when the external pressures build and things get noisy, don't lose sight of the goal. Without a North Star, you're going to lose your way and get pulled in a lot of directions. We had so many inputs, variables, and involved parties that if we hadn't stayed focused and didn't have a strong goal, we would have lost our way and been blown off course really quickly. Even though we had some setbacks, we were able to navigate it well and accomplish our goals because we knew where we wanted to end up. Revisit your charter often to ensure you're staying the course on where you're wanting to go. Second, take the time to design the end-to-end experience upfront. Because we'd lost sight of what it meant to build an MVP in our attempt to be scrappy, we didn't take the time to explore, understand, and design end-to-end experiences before starting. When you're working through that entire experience up front, you catch issues, discover the gotchas, and have a solid direction for the entire team. We suffered greatly because we didn't take this crucial step. Lesson number 3, don't let the desire for speed overshadow the need to understand the details. It can be easy for pressure from the team, stress to deliver, the desire to be done quickly so that you can save money, or other factors to push you to jump over key steps in the research, design, or grooming phases, just in the name of getting things done sooner. Don't forget that taking a little bit of time up front to work through those details saves everyone in product, UX, and design so much time and so much pain down the road. Lesson number 4, be aware of how stakeholders' feedback is influencing your decisions and motivations. Certain voices will always carry more weight, even if they don't want to, and even if you try not to let them. Have regular check-ins with yourself and your team along the way to temperature check how stakeholders' feedback is influencing your behavior, and course correct when it's needed, even if it requires hard conversations or a major adjustment. Lesson number 5, not fine, also fine. Lesson number 5, own your mistakes and use them to grow. No one is perfect. Everyone misses something. That's kind of expected in product. It's the ideal of so much of what we do, right? We're here to make mistakes. Don't feign perfection. Rather, own your mistakes and use them as opportunities to learn, to do, and become. And give your team members the same amount of space to do the same. With those lessons in mind, I would like to touch briefly on some of the things that we've put in place as a result of this recent experience to avoid falling into the same trap with other projects. So number 1, it is crucial to foster an environment of openness, psychological safety, and regular feedback that allows people to voice concerns or push back when they think you're pursuing the wrong path or need to make an adjustment. Be open and create a safe space for that feedback to happen. Number 2, don't make decisions on your own. At Bamboo, we have a trio relationship where the tech lead from development, a UX designer, and a product manager are meeting regularly, discussing the problems we're solving and the approach that we want to take. These relationships require a lot of mutual respect and willingness to question and challenge each other. This check and balance system is essential and ensures that there isn't one angle that is too heavily pushed when you're trying to solve the problem. And lastly, number 3, document your lessons learned and refer back to them often. The past is meant to be learned from. Make sure you're learning and adjusting. Retrospectives are an important part of making sure you don't make the same mistake twice. Take time to meet with the team at the end of every project, and even along the way on those bigger projects, to understand what's going well, where you can improve, where things fell flat, and what you want to remember for next time. We recently had a meeting where we were talking about a project that we're going to be doing in Q1 of next year, and that same member of our team interrupted us in a very passionate discussion that we were having and just reminded us about a couple of the things that we learned through hard experience during that migration project and just said, I'm a little worried that we're going down that same road. Like, can we talk about it? And his reminder helped us pivot in our approach, to pause for a minute, to make sure we were proactively addressing problems, and to make sure that we weren't going to experience similar pains in the future. I hope our time together this morning has helped you realize that there are other people out there, just like you, striving to do their best, working on great things, trying to do their best work, but who make mistakes along the way and encounter occasional speed bumps. I'd like to believe that we're all in our roles because we have a deep desire to add meaning to the world, to solve problems in a more thoughtful way, and to elevate the lives of the customers that we serve. We all had to get our start in product somewhere, and we're becoming better because of our resilience, our desire to grow, and our support of one another. May you each have bold dreams, patience to pursue them, and a willingness to try, because it is in the trying that we grow, we do, and we become. Thank you very much.
Hey, Amy.
Hey.
All right. Thank you for that. Casey would like to know, analysis paralysis is a real thing, but being scrappy can also cost you, and both methods exist on a spectrum. How do you know where a project should land on the spectrum? Does it change situationally?
I think it does. And I also think that sometimes if you get stuck in one for one project, you like swing to the opposite extreme. Like it's a pendulum. And I think that's where like the open conversations and making sure that you're having those discussions with your team really make a difference, because you're aware of, are we stuck on one either end or one extreme side of those things? But yeah, scrappy is a thing. And honestly, sometimes it's also not bad to be one of those extremes either, right? Like there are times when it's probably appropriate for that to apply for a hot minute. So I think it mostly means that you've got to be paying attention, you've got to be talking with your team, and you'll know the best way.
Okay, so it's
why are you laughing?
No, I love the hot minute. It's like
Yeah,
stay in it for a hot minute, right?
Yeah.
I like it.
Don't stay so long that you boil. You don't want to be the frog in the pot.
That's great. When you scope a project, how are you deciding whether to design end-to-end versus lean and minimum?
Okay, so this is a good question. And Steve is in the audience. I'm sure he's loving that I'm answering this one. So when we say end-to-end, that doesn't mean that you have worked out every detail. It doesn't mean that you have gone through every use case or everything and like thought through it all. When you design end-to-end, it means that you've thought through the problem. You have those high-level wireframes, those concepts, and you've thought about the problem holistically to make sure you're thinking about the gotchas and those things. I think it's important to know that that is essential up front all of the time, because you need to understand, at least from a high level, the project or the problem that you're solving with your project and how you're thinking about addressing it. Some of those details where you want to go deeper, those can come later as you're actually working through things. It's important to realize that like, this is where analysis paralysis comes in too, right? Like it's easy to be like, oh, I'm nervous if we don't like think, and I'm guilty of this. Like Steve will attest, Steve is our director of design. He will attest, I'm guilty of this, right? Where you get nervous and you're like, oh, but if we don't like think through every possible thing, like something's gonna change or we're gonna forget something, we're gonna do something wrong. That's not what we mean. We're not talking about thinking about all of those details. End-to-end really just means that you have a really clear understanding up front of the overall problem. You've thought through it at a high level, and it has helped set the direction for the team of the approach that you're gonna take.
Awesome. Next question.
Yeah.
Coming at you. How do you manage the weight of stakeholder feedback?
Ooh. I think I manage it well. No, I'm just kidding. I don't think that's the question. It is really, really tricky, right? To know when to give stakeholders feedback additional weight, or to know who gets to have a louder voice in the thing. I will say this, and this is one thing I love about Bamboo. We are trusted to solve problems in a meaningful way as a product team. So I don't necessarily have stakeholders like a board or an executive team that's showing up to try and tell me what to do. Like that kind of feedback doesn't really exist. But we do often, like we still bring all of those people along for the journey, and they're participating and they're asking questions. And I think it's tricky, right? Because sometimes there are certain people who have heavier influence just because of the nature of who they are or their position or, your relationship to that person in the organization. But one of the things that I've appreciated about Bamboo is I've been able to build relationships with all of those people where they feel like peers and not like someone who's in an ivory tower. So when they give me feedback where I'm like, oh, is that really what we want to do? Like, I don't feel scared or nervous or worried about pushing back on them. And so when they do come to us with feedback or they have advice or things that they're concerned about or a direction that they want us to take, it isn't just them showing up and telling me. I feel like I'm the advocate for my area of the product. And we're going to have a wrestle. We're going to have a conversation, and you're going to have to convince me, right? And it usually is never I get my way or they get their way. Those conversations lead to us finding that common ground and really the best solution for our customers, which is what matters. So if someone comes to you with feedback and they're a stakeholder, feel free to push back and have some conversation. Don't feel like you just need to do what they say just because they're in charge or because they own a certain department in the company that's affected by what you're doing. Make sure you're having those open wrestling matches, I guess we'll call them, to discuss what it is that actually needs to happen.
Yeah, and I imagine that goes alongside of customer feedback that you're getting, and it all plays into that discussion, right?
Yeah.
On that note, you guys are very focused on customer feedback, and when you made this acquisition, how did you balance the needs of the Trax customers versus the existing Bamboo customers while also sticking to the strategy?
Yeah, that's a good one. This is a tricky one, and it was tricky for us. So there are a couple of buckets. There are customers who still only use Trax. There are customers that were already on our existing Bamboo Trax integration, and then there are people who are new, they're new since the acquisition. And we've kind of truthfully just said, the Trax only people, we know our goal is to eventually get them all into Bamboo. We want to give them that home. And so they may have feedback around new things they want in that product, but our focus is on the goal of how do we make payroll delightful in Bamboo. Thankfully, that group is small and they're not super noisy. Every once in a while, they do have feedback that we have to apply mostly for regulation stuff and those kinds of things. But we don't really give them a lot of airtime because our goal is to bring them along with the rest of the group, right? And to create goodness that they're going to love way more than they just loved when they were just Trax customers. But then for our shared customers, and I will say this too, so when we are deciding roadmap, it's not just stakeholders and it's not just customer feedback. We go through all of the win-loss data. We go through all sorts of different categories and channels of where feedback's coming. We look at implementation surveys, post-implementation surveys. We go through all of our support tickets and look at categories, and we are looking at all of that globally to know how to make the best decisions. So it is tricky because we have customers all the time that are like, did you know about this thing? And I'm like, yes. You and 300 other people have told me, right? But then when we're collectively looking at the other data, it doesn't make sense for us to solve that problem quite yet. And so it's tricky to find that balance of not giving any one group power over you. But customers are really important to us. We're talking to them regularly. We read all of their feedback. It comes in through product board, and we're tagging it, and thinking about future features. And it really is just about making sure that you've got that balanced approach of understanding it and then knowing what's going to influence how you decide to prioritize.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. Let's give her another round of applause.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
It.